What would you think if an entire family vanished without a trace, leaving behind their home, their pets, their personal belongings, and absolutely no explanation? Now imagine this. A family of 4 disappears. No goodbye, no warning, no signs of a struggle. Just gone. Then investigators discover surveillance footage that appears to show the family crossing into Mexico. Case closed, right? Not even close. Because 3 years later, a discovery in the California desert would turn the entire story upside down and reveal a mystery far darker than anyone imagined. This is the chilling story of the McStay family, one of the most baffling family disappearances in modern American history, and the shocking trail of clues that eventually led investigators to a man nobody expected. February 2010. Joseph McStay, his wife Summer, and their 2 young sons, Gianni and Joseph Jr., seemed to vanish into thin air. Friends couldn't reach them. Family members couldn't contact them. Days passed. Then concern turned into panic. When investigators entered the McStay home, they found something strange. The family's dogs were still at the property. A carton of eggs sat open on the kitchen counter. Personal belongings remained inside. Nothing suggested a family preparing for a long trip, yet nobody was there. The house itself created even more confusion. The McStays were in the middle of renovations. Freshly updated areas mixed with unfinished work. Missing furniture wasn't unusual. Construction materials weren't unusual. The home already looked partially disrupted, which made it nearly impossible to tell whether anything was actually out of place. At first glance, it appeared as though the family had simply left. But why? And where had they gone? Then came the first major twist. A neighbor's surveillance camera captured what appeared to be the bottom portion of a vehicle leaving the McStay driveway. The footage wasn't clear enough to answer many questions, but it suggested someone had left the property around the time the family disappeared. Then investigators uncovered another clue, and this one seemed huge. Footage near the U.S. Mexico border appeared to show a family resembling the McStays walking into Mexico with 2 small children. Suddenly, a theory emerged. Maybe they left voluntarily. Maybe they wanted a fresh start. Maybe they crossed the border and disappeared by choice. For a while, that explanation seemed possible. Then investigators located the family's SUV. It had been abandoned in a parking lot near the border. That discovery only deepened the mystery. If the family had crossed into Mexico willingly, why leave their vehicle behind? Why leave so many personal belongings at home? And why had nobody heard from them since? The case stalled. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. Eventually, many people wondered if the truth would ever be known. But then, 3 years later, everything changed. In November 2013, a motorcyclist riding through a remote area of the California desert made a disturbing discovery. Authorities were called, investigators arrived, and soon they realized they had found the answer to one question. The McStay family had not started a new life. They had never disappeared voluntarily. The case instantly transformed from a missing persons mystery into a homicide investigation. But even with that discovery, investigators still faced a massive problem. Who was responsible and why? For years, detectives examined every possible lead. Friends, family, business associates. Anyone connected to Joseph McStay's life became part of the investigation. Then attention began focusing on one particular individual, a man named Chase Merritt. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Merritt was not a stranger. He was Joseph McStay's business partner. The two had worked together for years. He knew the family. He had access to their lives. And according to investigators, he may have had something else. A motive. As detectives dug deeper into financial records, troubling questions emerged. Investigators alleged that Merritt had been taking money connected to the business. According to prosecutors, financial problems and a gambling addiction created increasing pressure. Money became the center of the investigation. And suddenly, detectives were no longer looking at a random suspect. They were looking at someone with both opportunity and motive. But suspicion alone wasn't enough. Investigators needed evidence. Then another shocking discovery emerged. DNA linked Merritt to the McStay family's abandoned vehicle. That evidence would become one of the most important pieces of the prosecution's case. And yet the mystery wasn't over. Not even close. Because despite mounting evidence, the legal process moved painfully slowly. Years passed. The case became increasingly complex. Arguments erupted over evidence. Experts debated timelines. Questions continued to surround exactly what happened during those missing days in February 2010. For the McStay family's relatives, the wait for answers felt endless. Then finally, nearly a decade after the disappearance, the trial began. The courtroom became the stage for one of California's most closely watched murder cases. Prosecutors painted a picture of financial desperation. They argued that greed drove the crime, that money motivated everything. The defense challenged key parts of the investigation. They questioned conclusions. They disputed interpretations of evidence. For months, jurors listened. Witnesses testified. Experts analyzed. Investigators explained years of detective work. And through it all, one haunting question remained. How could an entire family vanish so completely? Because even after an arrest, the details still felt almost unbelievable. A family disappears. A home left frozen in time. A border crossing that sends investigators in the wrong direction. Years of uncertainty. And a mystery hidden in plain sight. In 2019, Chase Merritt was convicted for the murders of Joseph, Summer, Gianni, and Joseph Jr. The verdict brought a measure of closure to a case that had haunted investigators for nearly a decade. But closure doesn't erase the questions. And that's what makes this case so unforgettable. Not just what happened, but how easily the truth remained hidden. For years, many believed the family had chosen to leave. The clues seemed to point that way. The border footage, the abandoned SUV, the sudden disappearance. Everything appeared to tell one story, until investigators discovered it was the wrong story. And that's the terrifying part. Sometimes the biggest clue in a mystery isn't the evidence you find. It's the assumption you make. Because while the McStay family case was eventually solved, it serves as a chilling reminder that appearances can be deceiving. A normal day. A quiet neighborhood, a family home, and behind it all, a secret nobody could see.